You ever reached a point where you suddenly stopped caring about someone who once drained every part of your soul? It's a strange moment, quiet, shocking, almost spiritual. And if you're an empath, this moment isn't coldness. It's the beginning of a massive inner shift Carl Jung himself called a rebirth of the self. Something changes inside you. The guilt disappears. The fear fades. And the person who once controlled your emotions loses all their power in a single second. But why does this happen? What wakes up inside an empath when they finally detach? Why does the narcissist panic when the empath goes silent? And how does this transformation unlock the empath's deepest spiritual gifts? In today's video, I'm breaking down the hidden psychology behind this powerful moment. And trust me, by the end, you will see yourself with new eyes. So take a deep breath, settle in, and if any part of this story feels familiar, let me know in the comments. And if you want more content like this, hit subscribe, because your healing journey is just getting started. When an empath finally stops caring, something powerful begins to unfold deep within their soul. A shift that is almost invisible from the outside, yet life-changing on the inside. For so long, their energy moved outward, constantly giving, healing, fixing, and comforting everyone else, often at the cost of their own peace. But the moment they detach, the moment they say, enough, their energy reverses direction, turning inward for the first time in years. And this is where the transformation begins. Their intuition sharpens, because the energy that once leaked into everyone else's emotions now feeds their own inner voice. Their clarity returns, because their mind is no longer cluttered with other people's chaos. Emotional balance settles in, almost like a soft, calming wave washing over their heart. They start seeing the truth without forcing themselves to justify it. They finally recognize who was draining them and who was genuinely there for them. And something else happens, something many empaths don't expect. When their energy comes home, the world around them changes. People who used to rely on their kindness feel confused by the sudden shift. The manipulative ones lose their power instantly, because an empath's detachment is stronger than confrontation. Their silence becomes a boundary. Their absence becomes a lesson. And the empath, instead of feeling guilty, begins to feel grounded. They reconnect with their own needs, their dreams, their physical body, their spiritual center. Their nervous system relaxes. Their heart softens. Their soul expands. They no longer react to negativity the way they once did, because they are no longer pouring themselves into anyone who demands attention. Instead, they observe, reflect, and choose. Every choice becomes intentional. Every emotion becomes understood instead of suppressed. The empath begins to trust their instincts again, realizing those instincts were never wrong. They were simply ignored for too long. And slowly, they rise into a more confident version of themselves, one who knows when to give and when to step back, one who understands that caring does not mean self-sacrifice, and kindness does not mean being used. Their life becomes calmer, not because the world changed, but because they finally stopped giving away the energy that was meant to sustain them. And in this new inner stillness, new strength grows. A strength that is quiet, steady, and unshakable. This is the moment the empath truly meets themselves, not the version shaped by pain, but the version shaped by healing. And once this happens, they never go back to the old pattern again. Their energy stays where it belongs, within them, guiding them, protecting them, and shaping a life where peace is not a luxury, but a natural state of being. A narcissist's control is never as strong as it seems. It thrives only on the emotional reactions of others, and an empath has long been their perfect source of fuel, their constant supply of attention, validation, and energy. Every outburst, every plea, every silent suffering has been feeding the system, building the illusion that the narcissist holds the power. But the moment an empath detaches, the moment they become neutral, silent, or simply stop caring, everything changes in an instant. The carefully constructed control starts to crumble because the reactions the narcissist depends on are gone, replaced by calm, observation, and boundaries. Suddenly, their manipulations feel hollow, their threats meaningless, and the games they have been playing for months or years no longer work. They might try harder at first, pushing, provoking, attempting to pull the empath back into the old patterns, but nothing sticks because the emotional hook has been removed. The narcissist loses their grip because their power was never theirs to begin with. It was borrowed, drawn from the empath's compassion, forgiveness, and willingness to overgive. When the empath stops overgiving, the narcissist is left exposed, weak, and often confused, unable to understand why their usual tactics fail. And while this can feel shocking for both parties, it is a turning point, a moment where the empath no longer carries the weight of someone else's control, and the narcissist realizes their illusions have been shattered. The dynamic that once defined the relationship collapses silently yet completely, leaving the empath free to reclaim their energy, their space, and their self-respect. It is in this quiet detachment that true power emerges, not through confrontation or aggression, but simply through the refusal to be manipulated, drained, or controlled any longer. And in this new space, the empath begins to rebuild a life where emotional autonomy is not a privilege but a natural state of being, while the narcissist is forced to face the truth. Their influence only existed because the empath allowed it, and once that allowance ends, their control evaporates completely. When an empath reaches the point of true detachment, something extraordinary begins to unfold. They enter what Carl Jung called the individuation stage, the sacred process of becoming their true self. For years, empaths often lose themselves in other people's emotions, needs, and expectations, constantly bending and reshaping themselves to fit the world around them. They give, heal, and adjust so much that their own identity becomes blurred, and their purpose hidden under layers of self-sacrifice. But in this stage, the veil lifts. The empath begins to recognize that their life is not meant to be spent carrying the weight of everyone else's pain. Instead, they start turning inward, observing their own patterns, understanding their own desires, and reconnecting with the parts of themselves they had long ignored or dismissed. This is a subtle but powerful awakening, where every decision, thought, and feeling is filtered through the lens of authenticity rather than obligation. They begin to align with their inner identity, discovering what truly resonates with their soul, what feels right for them rather than what pleases others. Spiritual purpose, which once seemed distant or unattainable, now starts to emerge naturally, guiding their choices and clarifying their path. Their relationships transform, not because they force change, but because their newfound clarity sets new boundaries and attracts people who honor their growth. The inner dialogue of self-doubt softens, replaced by an understanding that their sensitivity is a gift, not a flaw, and that being empathic does not mean losing oneself in the process. Every emotion, once scattered or overwhelming, is now integrated, understood, and respected. The empath learns to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously, and in doing so, they reclaim control over their life. This stage is not about perfection. It is about wholeness, about embracing both the light and shadow within. It is a journey into depth, where the empath finally experiences themselves as a complete being, not fragmented or defined by others' expectations. And in this process, freedom blooms, the freedom to choose, to create, and to live in alignment with a life that reflects their true essence. Individuation is not sudden or dramatic. It is a steady, unfolding transformation, a rebirth into self-awareness, self-respect, and spiritual alignment, where the empath becomes fully who they were always meant to be, and every step forward is guided by the quiet certainty of their inner truth. For an empath, the journey from overgiving to establishing boundaries is one of the most transformative shifts in their life. For years, their natural compassion and sensitivity have been a gift, but it has often come at the expense of their own well-being. They apologize for taking space, for saying no, for simply existing with their own needs, because they were taught, or perhaps conditioned, to prioritize others above themselves. But the moment they stop overgiving, a profound change occurs. The empath begins to understand that protecting their peace is not selfish, it is necessary. Boundaries are no longer a vague concept or something to feel guilty about. They become firm, clear, and unapologetic. Every no becomes a statement of self-respect, every choice a reflection of inner alignment, and every act of detachment a demonstration of self-preservation. People around them immediately feel the shift, even if they cannot articulate it. The dynamic that once allowed manipulation, emotional dumping, or constant demands begins to dissolve. The energy that the empath once gave away so freely is now reserved for themselves, and in that space, clarity and calm emerge. Their relationships begin to balance naturally. Those who honor the empath's boundaries remain, and those who thrived on overdependence drift away. The empath learns to differentiate between true need and manipulation, between healthy connection and draining attachment. And as their boundaries solidify, the empath's confidence grows. They no longer carry the weight of guilt or fear when protecting themselves, and their sense of inner peace deepens. Every interaction is filtered through awareness rather than compulsion, and their emotional energy becomes a resource, not a currency they give away at a loss. The shift from overgiving to boundaries is not abrupt. It is gradual, steady, and deeply liberating. It is a declaration to the world and, more importantly, to themselves that their presence matters, their feelings matter, and their life is their own to steward. In this space, the empath finally experiences the freedom of self-respect, the clarity of emotional autonomy, and the serenity that comes from knowing that caring for oneself is not only allowed but essential. For the first time, their empathy is a choice, not an obligation, and their life begins to reflect the strength and integrity of someone who understands that true compassion starts from within. When an empath finally reaches a point where they withdraw, where they stop overextending themselves for the sake of others, something remarkable begins to happen. A shift so subtle that it can go unnoticed by the casual observer, yet so profound that it changes the entire energy of every relationship around them. For years, empaths have given freely, often at great personal cost, pouring their time, energy, and emotional resources into people who may have never truly appreciated them. Their presence was constant, unwavering, and generous, but it was also invisible in its power, because those around them became accustomed to it, taking it for granted, assuming it would never end. The empathy, kindness, and patience that seemed effortless were, in truth, a sacred offering, and yet those who benefited the most rarely recognized the depth of the gift. But when an empath withdraws, when they step back and stop offering the endless flow of energy that once fueled others, the dynamic shifts instantly and dramatically. People who once leaned on the empath without acknowledgement or gratitude suddenly feel the absence, the gap that was never visible until now. The silence, the stillness, the refusal to engage or react becomes louder than any word, louder than any action. The absence carries weight, a quiet authority that speaks more powerfully than years of emotional generosity ever could. It exposes the patterns that were hidden, revealing who relied on the empath out of genuine care and who relied on them purely out of convenience or self-interest. This withdrawal is not about punishment, spite, or anger. It is a natural result of healing, of boundaries being established, and of the empath reclaiming their energy. Yet the effect is profound. Suddenly, those who thrived on the empath's presence feel a sense of loss, a realization that the warmth, attention, and emotional support they once received is no longer available, and they may never have truly understood its value until it is gone. In this silence, in this absence, the empath exerts power without effort, influence without intention. There is no need for confrontation or explanation, because their mere withdrawal is enough to recalibrate the entire relational field. The healed empath's absence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the truth of each relationship, revealing patterns of dependency, neglect, or selfishness that were previously ignored or dismissed. At the same time, it provides the empath with a profound sense of liberation. Without the weight of obligation, guilt, or emotional labor imposed by others, they can finally turn inward, reconnect with their own needs, desires, and purpose, and experience life from a place of authenticity rather than constant accommodation. The space created by this absence is fertile ground for self-discovery, growth, and spiritual alignment, and it cannot be underestimated in its transformative power. As days, weeks, or months pass, the empath observes the reactions of those who once depended on them. Some may attempt to fill the gap, reaching out, apologizing, or suddenly offering what they had never given before, while others may retreat entirely, revealing the true nature of the bonds they shared. The empath watches with clarity, free from the emotional fog that once clouded judgment, recognizing that the value of their energy was never in manipulation or control, but in the quiet, unwavering commitment to self-awareness and self-respect. And while the absence may feel uncomfortable to others, it is a testament to the empath's inner strength, their ability to honor their own emotional needs without compromise, and their refusal to allow themselves to be diminished for the sake of another's convenience. It is in this absence that the empath truly commands attention, not by speaking or acting, but by simply existing in alignment with their truth, radiating a quiet power that cannot be ignored. Over time, the world begins to notice the difference, the subtle shift in energy, the calm strength, the peace that replaces anxiety or neediness. People recognize, whether consciously or unconsciously, that something essential has changed, that the energy that was once given freely is now contained, sacred, and self-directed. The empath's absence is no longer empty, it is full of intention, clarity, and autonomy. And as they continue to hold this space, they reinforce the lessons of self-respect, boundaries, and authentic connection, teaching not through confrontation, but through the undeniable influence of presence held in absence. The power of a healed empath is not loud or aggressive, it is quiet, steady, and undeniable. In stepping back, they demonstrate that true value is recognized not by constant availability but by the integrity of one's energy, the wisdom to protect it, and the courage to release it when necessary. In this way, the empath's absence becomes more potent than any act of giving ever was, a reminder that strength lies in self-alignment, peace is cultivated through boundaries, and the most profound influence is often felt in the silence that follows, echoing far louder than words ever could. When an empath begins to detach from the emotional weight of others, a remarkable and almost magical shift starts to occur within their consciousness, one that can feel both subtle and overwhelming at the same time. For years, the empath has been so focused on managing the emotions, needs, and energies of everyone around them that their own inner voice, their own subtle guidance, and even their natural psychic sensitivity have often been buried beneath the constant noise of other people's lives. They may have experienced flashes of intuition before, dreams that seemed significant but were ignored, or gut feelings that were overlooked because attending to others always took precedence. But once the empath consciously stops overcaring, once they reclaim the energy that was once drained by emotional attachment and manipulation, these dormant gifts begin to awaken in full force. Detachment acts like a clearing of the fog, a quieting of the external and internal chaos, allowing the empath to notice patterns, signals, and subtle cues that were always present but previously obscured. Their intuition sharpens, moving from vague feelings or fleeting impressions into a steady, reliable guidance system that informs their decisions, relationships, and personal growth. Dreams become more vivid, more symbolic, and often carry messages that are impossible to ignore, as if their subconscious mind, finally unburdened by constant external noise, is free to communicate clearly. Everyday moments start carrying hidden signs and synchronicities that the empath notices effortlessly. They may encounter recurring symbols, meet people who catalyze their growth in precise ways, or experience feelings of déjà vu that point toward deeper truths. These are not coincidences. They are the natural language of the universe, speaking directly to the empath's heightened awareness. And it is not only the external signs that strengthen, but the inner guidance itself grows more distinct, louder, and undeniably trustworthy. The empath starts to recognize the difference between fear, desire, or old patterns and genuine intuition, understanding that this inner voice always seeks alignment with truth, clarity, and higher purpose. Psychic sensitivity, once sporadic and uncertain, becomes a tool of discernment, helping the empath navigate relationships, career choices, and spiritual growth with precision. They learn to trust their gut reactions, knowing that these intuitive hits are rarely wrong, and they begin to act on them without hesitation or second-guessing. This clarity extends to people around them, enabling the empath to see through pretenses, detect hidden motives, and respond with wisdom rather than emotion. The more the empath maintains detachment, the more consistent and reliable these spiritual gifts become, as though their energy was being redirected into perception, insight, and alignment with a higher consciousness. It is during this stage that they often notice a profound connection to universal rhythms, a sense that life is not chaotic but deeply orchestrated, and that every interaction, experience, and encounter has purpose. This heightened sensitivity also enhances creativity, problem-solving, and decision-making, as the empath can access ideas and insights from sources that feel larger than themselves, yet deeply personal. Over time, the empath comes to understand that these gifts were never lost. They were simply drowned out by the noise of overgiving and emotional overextension. Detachment clears space, allowing clarity, wisdom, and spiritual attunement to flourish. They begin to anticipate events, recognize the lessons in challenging situations, and feel guided toward people and experiences that support their growth rather than drain them. In social interactions, they can sense underlying emotions and intentions with remarkable accuracy, making them both empathetic and discerning at the same time. It is not uncommon for dreams to offer solutions or guidance, for visions or insights to appear spontaneously, and for synchronicities to occur with increasing frequency, confirming that they are moving in alignment with their spiritual path. The empath learns to honor these gifts, understanding that their sensitivity is not a weakness but a divine tool for navigation, healing, and connection with higher truths. This awakening brings a sense of empowerment and calm, a realization that the universe is not separate from them but intimately involved in their journey, and that their inner guidance will never fail if they continue to nurture, protect, and respect it. And in this state, intuition becomes not just a passive feeling but an active, living part of daily life, a compass that guides decisions, relationships, and purpose with clarity and confidence. The empath no longer doubts themselves, no longer ignores subtle signs, and no longer allows the opinions, emotions, or manipulations of others to cloud their judgment. Each intuitive hit, each dream, each inner whisper is received with trust and acted upon with clarity, reinforcing a cycle of growth, insight, and alignment. In this way, the spiritual gifts and intuition of the empath do not merely awaken, they expand rapidly, becoming a central, guiding force in their life, illuminating paths that were previously invisible and allowing them to step fully into their power, wisdom, and purpose, free from distraction, interference, or emotional drain, and fully attuned to the subtle, magnificent guidance of the universe. When an empath reaches the stage where they stop overgiving and detach from the emotional weight of others, a profound shift occurs not only within themselves but also in the energy they emit into the world, and one of the most remarkable transformations is the way they attract people. For years, empaths have often unconsciously drawn in those who are wounded, needy, or dependent, individuals who seek to offload their emotional burdens onto someone who naturally absorbs and understands them. This dynamic is subtle and often disguised as connection or love, but in reality, it keeps the empath trapped in cycles of emotional labor, exhaustion, and sometimes even manipulation. Their energy, warm and receptive, acts as a magnet for those who are seeking care, attention, or rescue. But when the empath begins to shift their focus inward, reclaiming the energy that was once dispersed, something almost instantaneous happens. The type of people who are drawn to them changes. The empath's energy stops broadcasting desperation to save or fix others and instead radiates alignment, calm, and wholeness. This energy shift acts like a filter, naturally repelling those who are seeking to take, manipulate, or drain, and simultaneously attracting individuals who are balanced, self-aware, and capable of engaging as equals. Suddenly, relationships that were once emotionally one-sided begin to feel different, lighter, and more reciprocal. Those who thrive on drama, dependency, or neediness begin to drift away, while new people appear, often subtly at first, who reflect similar energy, values, and intentions as the empath. This is not about control or intentionally pushing people away. It is a natural consequence of energetic alignment. As the empath maintains boundaries, focuses on self-care, and nurtures their own emotional and spiritual growth, their aura changes. It becomes clear, steady, and vibrant, signaling that they are no longer available to unconscious or toxic patterns. The empath begins to notice the difference in interactions almost immediately. Conversations feel lighter, connections feel more meaningful, and engagements that once drained them now feel mutually supportive. They experience a deep sense of relief and freedom because the relationships they form no longer require constant sacrifice or compromise of their emotional stability. This stage is also deeply transformative for the empath's self-perception. They recognize that their role in life is not to save or fix anyone, but to engage with people who bring out the best in them and encourage their growth. They begin to see that true connection is built on equality, respect, and mutual understanding rather than dependency and need. As the empath attracts healthier relationships, they also begin to release the guilt that once accompanied the act of saying no, setting limits, or walking away from toxic patterns. The shift in energy not only protects them from being drained but also amplifies their ability to recognize authenticity in others. They start to discern subtle cues in behavior, tone, and energy that indicate whether someone is coming from a place of wholeness or neediness. Their relationships become more intentional, and every connection begins to feel like a conscious choice rather than an unconscious habit. This transformation has ripple effects across all areas of life. Friendships, romantic relationships, family interactions, and professional connections all begin to realign. The empath discovers that when they stop attracting wounded souls, they open space for collaborations, friendships, and partnerships that are genuinely supportive and mutually enriching. They begin to experience a sense of community and belonging that was previously impossible when surrounded by energy vampires or dependent personalities. Over time, the empath's awareness of energy becomes more refined, and they no longer engage with those who attempt to drain them, either emotionally or spiritually. They understand that their energy is sacred and that maintaining alignment with their own well-being is not selfish but necessary for their spiritual evolution. This stage also fosters confidence, as the empath no longer fears loneliness or judgment. They trust that the right people will appear naturally, in alignment with their frequency. And in this space, the empath's own gifts, intuition, and spiritual growth accelerate because their energy is no longer scattered or depleted by others. They begin to thrive in a new kind of freedom, one where relationships are not obligations but choices, and where the quality of connection outweighs quantity. In this stage, the empath learns one of the most powerful lessons of their journey. True attraction does not require effort, sacrifice, or overgiving. It is a natural consequence of being aligned, whole, and energetically clear. And as the empath continues to live in this alignment, they notice that their life becomes more vibrant, relationships become more fulfilling, and their personal and spiritual growth accelerates, all because they have stopped attracting wounded souls and have begun inviting equals into their life, people who reflect their energy, honor their boundaries, and support their journey in a way that is deeply nourishing, balanced, and empowering. Breaking a trauma bond is one of the most profound and liberating experiences an empath can go through, though it rarely happens suddenly or without struggle. For years, the empath may have found themselves caught in a loop of emotional intensity, drama, and unresolved tension with someone who drained, manipulated, or controlled them, often without realizing the depth of the bond they had formed. Trauma bonds are subtle and insidious. They are not formed overnight, and they are not the result of love alone. They are created through cycles of highs and lows, emotional push and pull, intermittent reinforcement, and a sense of being needed, responsible, or indispensable to someone else's emotional survival. For the empath, who is naturally sensitive and compassionate, these cycles can feel like love, loyalty, or duty, even as they chip away at their energy, self-worth, and identity. But the moment the empath stops caring, truly detaches, and refuses to feed the emotional loop, the trauma bond begins to unravel. Stopping caring is not about being cold or unfeeling. It is about reclaiming personal power and ending the unconscious participation in a system that has kept them tethered to pain. As the empath disengages, the cycles of manipulation, neediness, or drama lose their hold. They no longer respond to provocation, guilt, or emotional withdrawal in the way they once did. Their silence, neutrality, and calm become a shield, and in that shield, freedom begins to emerge. This is the moment when energy that was once scattered and drained by the attachment finally returns home, where it belongs. The empath begins to feel the full weight of their own power, the clarity of their own mind, and the authenticity of their own identity. They recognize patterns they were blind to for years, the ways they were used, the ways they gave too much, and the ways they unconsciously perpetuated the bond because detachment felt impossible. But in breaking the bond, they reclaim more than just energy. They reclaim themselves. Every thought, feeling, and action becomes theirs again, untainted by the manipulation or dependency of another. With each passing day, the empath gains confidence in their autonomy, learning that they can exist fully without the approval, attention, or validation of the person who once held them in this emotional loop. Their perception sharpens, and they begin to notice not only how they were ensnared but also the lessons embedded within the experience. Lessons about boundaries, self-respect, emotional awareness, and the importance of discernment in all relationships. The process of breaking the trauma bond also brings a deeper understanding of love and connection. The empath realizes that true relationships are reciprocal, balanced, and free from cycles of control or compulsion. They come to understand that their natural empathy is a gift to be shared consciously, not a tool for someone else's survival or manipulation. Spiritually, this break is transformative. It opens space for the empath to reconnect with their inner guidance, intuition, and purpose without interference. Psychologically, it heals old wounds that had been kept open by attachment and codependency. Emotionally, it restores the ability to feel fully without the constant undercurrent of fear, guilt, or obligation that trauma bonds impose. And socially, it reshapes the empath's interactions, attracting people who honor their boundaries and reflecting a new standard of respect in all connections. In breaking the trauma bond fully, the empath steps into a version of themselves that has been waiting patiently beneath the surface, confident, self-assured, and aligned with their truth. They understand that the emotional intensity that once defined their relationships is no longer a necessary measure of love or loyalty. Instead, they learn that peace, stability, and clarity are far more powerful indicators of genuine connection. They discover that detachment is not abandonment, it is reclamation. It is the conscious choice to no longer participate in emotional patterns that are destructive or unbalanced. And as the bond dissolves, the empath experiences an expanding sense of freedom, a freedom that is both exhilarating and stabilizing, like finally being able to breathe after years of holding intention, obligation, and unexpressed truth. They walk forward with renewed energy, seeing themselves clearly for the first time in years, and in that clarity, they understand the depth of their own resilience. The trauma bond, once an invisible chain, has been replaced by a conscious connection to self, a bond with their own strength, wisdom, and authenticity that no external force can break. This is the moment of true empowerment, when the empath realizes that their energy, identity, and life are theirs to steward, protect, and cultivate without compromise. And in this reclamation, they find not only freedom but also the foundation for healthier, balanced, and truly reciprocal relationships, where love is mutual, energy is honored, and the soul can thrive unencumbered by the cycles that once defined their existence. When an empath finally steps out of cycles of overgiving, manipulation, and emotional attachment, something profound and transformative begins to unfold within them. Their sense of self-worth skyrockets. For years, empaths often struggle with feelings of inadequacy, guilt, or the belief that their natural sensitivity and compassion are flaws, burdens, or signs of weakness. They may have been told they are too much, overly emotional, or too sensitive by those who could not understand the depth of their empathy, and over time, these messages, repeated by friends, family, partners, or society, are internalized as truth. This internalization creates a subtle but persistent self-doubt, a shadow that colors every interaction, every decision, and every perception of their own value. But as the empath detaches, sets boundaries, and stops pouring themselves into people who cannot reciprocate, a new understanding begins to take root. They were never too much. Their emotions, compassion, and sensitivity were never liabilities. They were powerful gifts that connect them to others, to the universe, and to their own soul. With detachment comes clarity, and with clarity comes recognition of intrinsic worth. They begin to see themselves as whole, complete, and inherently valuable, independent of external validation, approval, or recognition. This realization is both liberating and empowering, like stepping into a light that has always been there but was obscured by the weight of other people's expectations and judgments. As self-worth grows, the empath's confidence in themselves deepens. They no longer feel the need to apologize for their boundaries, their choices, or their natural way of experiencing life. Their sensitivity, once seen as a weakness, is now embraced as strength, a superpower that allows them to perceive nuances, feel deeply, and connect with the world in ways that others cannot. They understand that being soft does not mean being weak, and that compassion does not require self-sacrifice. Every experience that once caused them to doubt themselves becomes a lesson, a mirror reflecting not their inadequacy, but their resilience, courage, and integrity. As their self-worth grows, the empath begins to attract people and situations that honor their value, naturally filtering out those who do not recognize or respect their gifts. They no longer tolerate being undervalued, dismissed, or used, and in doing so, they create a life that reflects their true worth. Emotionally, this shift feels like a release from chains. The anxiety, guilt, and self-criticism that once dominated their mind no longer hold sway. Psychologically, they begin to trust their instincts, intuition, and decisions, knowing that their judgment is sound because it is informed by authenticity, not fear or need for approval. Spiritually, they feel aligned with their purpose, aware that their empathy is a sacred tool for connection, healing, and guidance, and that living in alignment with their gifts strengthens rather than diminishes their soul. They start to celebrate their achievements, their insights, and their ability to navigate the world with grace and awareness. Every act of kindness, every gesture of understanding, every moment of listening deeply becomes a testament to their inner strength, not an obligation or burden. In this stage, the empath's inner narrative shifts completely. Words like too much or overly sensitive lose all meaning because they are replaced with affirmations of power, wisdom, and authenticity. They see their past struggles not as weaknesses but as experiences that shaped their resilience and deepened their understanding of life, others, and themselves. As self-worth solidifies, it creates a ripple effect in every aspect of their existence. Relationships become healthier and more balanced, decisions are made with confidence rather than fear, and every interaction is approached from a place of grounded clarity rather than reactive neediness. Their energy, once scattered and depleted by trying to meet everyone else's expectations, is now concentrated, focused, and vibrant, fueling personal growth, creativity, and the pursuit of life aligned with their values. This newfound self-worth is not temporary or conditional, it is a permanent shift, a recognition that their existence, emotions, and gifts have intrinsic value that no one can diminish. The empath begins to move through the world with a quiet yet undeniable strength, radiating confidence, compassion, and authenticity in equal measure. They understand that their sensitivity allows them to navigate human complexity with grace, to perceive truth beneath the surface, and to offer empathy without losing themselves in the process. In this way, their self-worth skyrockets not because of external validation, but because they finally see and honor themselves fully. They embrace their emotions, their intuition, their depth, and their ability to care deeply, recognizing these as the very things that make them powerful, whole, and extraordinary. Every challenge they face becomes an opportunity to exercise this strength, every relationship a reflection of their worth, and every choice a declaration of their authenticity. In essence, the empath steps into a life where their softness is celebrated, their sensitivity is revered, and their self-worth is unshakable, a life in which they are fully empowered, fully aligned, and fully themselves. When an empath reaches the stage of detachment from people, situations, or patterns that no longer serve their highest good, a remarkable and almost magical transformation begins to take shape in every aspect of their life. And this is the moment where life itself begins to align with what can only be described as divine timing. For years, the empath may have felt caught in cycles of frustration, disappointment, or unreciprocated energy, constantly giving to those who were not aligned with their soul, waiting for moments or people that never fully appeared, and wondering why their efforts never seemed to bear fruit. This was never a reflection of their lack of ability, value, or intention, but rather a misalignment between their energy and the world around them. Each attempt to force connection, to maintain bonds that were draining, or to heal those who were unwilling or unable to heal themselves, kept the empath out of rhythm with the natural flow of the universe. But the moment they consciously detach from these unbalanced connections, a profound shift occurs. The barriers that blocked the natural course of life dissolve, and the empath begins to feel the effortless unfolding of their path. Opportunities start appearing in ways that feel synchronous, almost as if the universe itself is guiding their steps, opening doors that had always been closed or obscured by misaligned energy. These opportunities are not merely external. They often carry deep spiritual significance, resonating with the empath's purpose, gifts, and values. They may manifest as career breakthroughs, creative inspiration, new friendships, or encounters with people who bring joy, understanding, and mutual growth. Every interaction and circumstance begins to feel like it carries intention, and the empath senses the hand of divine orchestration behind it all. Soul connections, both old and new, begin to appear, individuals who mirror the empath's energy, support their growth, and honor their boundaries. These relationships are not forced or strained. They emerge naturally, easily, and in perfect timing, often leaving the empath amazed at how effortlessly alignment occurs once resistance and attachment are released. In these moments, the empath realizes that detachment is not about abandonment or coldness, but about creating space for authenticity, presence, and divine flow. They notice a rhythm in their life that had been missing for years, days and events unfolding with purpose, coincidences that feel like signs, and encounters that provide clarity, guidance, or lessons precisely when needed. This alignment is subtle yet profound, touching every aspect of existence. The empath's emotional world becomes calmer, their mind clearer, and their spirit lighter. Old anxieties about the future, fear of scarcity, or doubts about worth begin to fade, replaced by trust in timing and faith in the unfolding process. The empath begins to understand that what was once perceived as delay, frustration, or loss was, in truth, preparation for this very alignment. Life begins to feel like a dance, with each step choreographed in harmony with their purpose, gifts, and highest good. Spiritually, this stage is transformative. The empath senses a stronger connection with universal consciousness, higher guidance, or the divine intelligence that governs existence. Their intuition becomes a trusted compass, guiding them toward the people, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with their soul's evolution. Dreams, synchronicities, and subtle signs become more vivid and meaningful, reinforcing the sense that nothing in their life occurs by accident. Every encounter, whether challenging or joyful, is recognized as a part of the grand design, teaching them lessons, opening doors, or strengthening their alignment with purpose. Emotionally, this alignment brings a profound sense of inner peace. The empath no longer experiences the constant anxiety of trying to control outcomes or please others. Instead, they surrender to the natural flow, trusting that life itself knows the perfect timing for every person, event, and opportunity. This surrender does not mean passivity. Rather, it allows the empath to act from a place of clarity, confidence, and authenticity, making choices that feel natural and empowering rather than forced or reactive. As they continue to operate from this space, their life begins to reflect the harmony of divine timing in tangible ways. Career opportunities that once seemed elusive or stagnant may suddenly appear, offering pathways that resonate with the empath's passions and talents. Creative ideas, projects, or ventures that felt blocked or impossible may flow effortlessly, as if the universe itself is supporting their manifestation. Relationships evolve naturally, drawing in people who are compatible, nurturing, and aligned with the empath's growth, while gently removing those who are incompatible or draining. Even seemingly mundane events begin to carry significance, as the empath notices the subtle ways in which life communicates, teaches, and supports them. There is a deepening of gratitude, as the empath recognizes the perfection in timing, the purpose behind past struggles, and the beauty of synchronicities that once went unnoticed. They develop patience, knowing that life unfolds according to its own rhythm, and faith, trusting that everything they need, every lesson they require, and every opportunity aligned with their highest good will appear at precisely the right moment. This alignment also strengthens their spiritual gifts, intuition, and inner guidance, creating a positive feedback loop. As they act in harmony with divine timing, they experience more clarity and receive more guidance, which in turn allows them to navigate life with even greater precision, confidence, and peace. The empath begins to notice a sense of flow in decision-making, relationships, and daily life, where resistance is minimal and choices feel aligned rather than forced. Their energy becomes magnetic, naturally attracting opportunities and people that resonate with their frequency, while those that are misaligned drift away without conflict or effort. Over time, this alignment fosters a deep sense of empowerment, freedom, and purpose. The empath experiences life as a series of unfolding miracles, each moment carrying meaning, each encounter serving growth, and each step reinforcing the trust that the universe is supporting their journey. They understand that detachment from what no longer serves them was never a loss but the necessary catalyst for this alignment, creating the space, clarity, and energetic integrity required to receive the abundance, love, and opportunities meant for them. Emotionally, spiritually, and practically, life feels easier, lighter, and more vibrant, as if everything is falling into place precisely as it should. The empath recognizes that divine timing does not rely on external force, manipulation, or overexertion. It relies on alignment, clarity, and the willingness to release control. By stepping out of old patterns, letting go of people who no longer serve their growth, and trusting in the unseen flow of life, they find themselves moving effortlessly toward experiences, relationships, and circumstances that reflect their highest potential. Every moment becomes a lesson, a gift, or an invitation to greater awareness. The empath's life begins to feel like a tapestry woven with precision and care, each thread representing lessons, growth, and opportunities perfectly timed to create a harmonious whole. They realize that the peace, joy, and fulfillment they sought externally were always available internally, waiting for the moment when they would step fully into alignment. And as this alignment deepens, the empath moves through life with grace, wisdom, and confidence, knowing that divine timing governs all things and that every person, opportunity, and experience arrives at the perfect moment to support their growth, purpose, and well-being. In this state, life flows effortlessly, soul connections deepen, opportunities manifest naturally, and inner peace becomes the constant backdrop to their existence, allowing the empath to live fully, authentically, and in perfect harmony with the timing of the universe.